Mm-hmm. Hi, Bruno. Thank you for coming. Normally I'll read off people's LinkedIn profile. Yours was a little bit short. So to start with, I wanted to just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. How have you got to this point in your career, and just hear on to a little bit about the sort of things we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bruno Ulmkalns, proud Brummie from Birmingham. That's how I met you on the networking scene. I've been a salesperson all I can remember. I mean, I went to university to study sports coaching, left university, and anything that wasn't English, maths or science, if it wasn't one of those core subjects, the funding wasn't there. So initially, a few of my pals were working in Stratford-upon-Avon at a call centre selling gas and electric, proper bashing the phones, 100 calls a day. Took to that like a duck to water. Initially, it was inbound calls, so the phone would ring, you'd advise them through the gas and electric options that they had, and then process it, and we was on £1 commission per sale. So while I was there, I thought, let's actually go through to the campaign manager, and I asked, if I call them back, if I make an outbound call, would you do me a deal? And he went £2 per sale. So I doubled my commission from £1 to £2, and that's where my love of cold calling came from. We actually made a little kind of mini team that was responsible for clearing out the data, and I soon realised there that company had so much sort of untapped opportunity. They've just got loads of data sat there, but no one really had the sort of impetus or the willingness to go through that and turn it into sales. So I never really wanted to go into sales. Equally, I never fell into sales because I'd failed at something else. It was just something that I found. I mean, I've always played guitar and played rugby, so I've been a bit of a show off. I've liked pressure of having to get something right. Playing your part as a wider team. So I've always never shone from the spotlight and never been scared to make myself look silly or make mistakes. I've always just been happy to get out there and give it what I've got. I had various jobs in media, selling for magazines. I've sold wood pellets for big biomass boilers in hotels and care homes, did really well with that. Till the company entered administration. I've worked for the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. I've worked for a fintech company, both employed and self-employed. Went self-employed in about 2017, 2018 it was. Just thrived off cold calling, bashing down doors, getting people. I suppose the main strength I have is getting people who I've never met before. They don't know me, I don't know them. Is getting them to really open up. And I think that's a skill that I have, that I exchange for money to keep the lights on. And that's really where I've come from. It's just bashing down doors, getting the information out of people and communicating with people. People drive me, people motivate me. And I think sales can seem very cold, very scientific and very regimented. But at the end of the day, we're playing a game in cold calling in sales where the rules don't exist. It's funny how we're playing that game that isn't necessarily codified. And I've always enjoyed, with music, with sport, it's the grey areas that I find the fun. That's where the creativity can be found. And sales to me is a very creative pursuit. Yes, we have targets. Yes, we have things that we have to do along that way. But it's the creative side and getting the best out of people that I've always loved, and has helped me to achieve some success, really.
I love that. I think it doesn't have a great reputation as far as specifically cold calling. So you, just from what you've said, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the number one thing, at least I'm aware of, when you're doing the outbound stuff is mindset. Because if you're going into it tripping up over yourself and worrying,
yeah,
then it's going to be punishing yourself every time. So I really like what you just said about trying to think creatively about it.
Yeah.
So also my favorite part about sales is when you understand a little bit of how people work, and then you understand the methods to tease the best out of it to lead them towards that answer that you're looking for.
Yeah.
I really like that idea of trying to think about it creatively.
Yeah.
So from creative background myself, you've mentioned that you kind of fell into it a little bit. Was there anything in particular that you would say really attracted you to this? Because obviously you got into it, you've dabbled in a few different things, but that's sort of been your lane.
Yeah.
Was there anything that, was there any point, first off, I guess, that any point where you thought, I hate this, I'm not doing it? Or was there always something that excited you about that challenge?
Good question. I suppose It came from when I was at university. The biggest thing I loved about university, that it was a big melting pot. We had people from all four corners of the UK, put them all into one spot and see how, and shake up the numbers, like shake them up. And I suppose I was everyone's friend at university. I loved meeting new people. There was people from the city coming up from London. There was people from a tiny little village in Wales that had never been to a place with more than 100,000 people in it. And I suppose I just really enjoyed finding out what made people tick. How do I get them on side? How do we get along in this foreign environment? And I suppose that kind of applies to sales now. When I'm picking up the phone to someone, I don't know what their experiences are. I don't know if they're a single child, if they were brought up with 7 siblings. I don't know if they're rich, if they're poor, if they're happy, if they're sad. And I suppose I just always enjoy challenging myself. How do I get someone whose life is just so different to mine? How do I find that common ground? And I find that is fun to me, as crazy as that may sound.
I really resonate. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I have to do sales for what I do. But it's not my background. My background is more of the creative side. But what I enjoy about it is the people, like you just said. And because I think that typically, if you talk to people, you're usually going to find more that you have in common that you don't.
Yeah.
And once you start finding a good conversation and stuff, that like it's exciting, right? To try and it's nice to know that you can have a chat with just about anyone. So that's what I would love to get out of this conversation, and what I'm hoping listeners of this would as well, is like, what are the sort of tips that we can go through of like bringing you into that and getting you excited? Before we get into that though, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this as well, but what are you doing currently with your skill set? Because I know that's one of the things I really want to focus on, is how you are now taking what you're practicing and have learned.
Yeah.
How are you using that to help others at the moment?
I suppose this falls down to the wider question of how do we sell? Why do we sell? What's the point in it? And I think everything that is important to me in sales is finding someone's motivation. Why are they doing something? What's the actual end goal? So, for instance, no one's born and goes, you know what, I want to make a business, or I want to get a job. But what they really do want is security, that they've got to have a roof over their head, or it might be choice to go wherever they want on holiday, or choice when they're walking around the supermarket to see something. If they want it for dinner, yep, I can have that for dinner. So I suppose sales is all about the end goal. It's all about what are people motivated to do in their life. So it's all about, my life is all about helping people to get to that end goal. How you do it, the service you provide, whether it's media, whether it's a magazine, or whether it's, I don't know, accountancy services, they're all that sort of means to the end, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So it's my job to help people to get to where they want to be, whether it's they want to double the footfall in their shop, whether it's they want to make more sales, whether they want to improve how they're perceived, the perception to the public. And I suppose what I do is always the same. I pick up the phone, I call people, I give them a presentation, I onboard them seamlessly and extract all the information we need to help to make sure that we give them a good product or service delivery. But at the end of the day, the only reason people do that, the only reason people will listen to me, is because I have an appreciation for that end goal. So I suppose whilst we're all so different, we all live such different lives, whether that's politically, whether it's geographically, it's all over the shop, the world is. There's no rules, there's no rhyme or reason to it, apparently, when you look at it. But everyone really wants the same thing. And it's a case of, how do we find that mutual thing in common and then recommend something that bridges that gap from where we are right now to where we want to be. So that's all I'm really doing. It's trying to extract where a company or an individual, whether it's a sole trader or a massive PLC, whatever it may be, where are you now and where do you want to be? That's all I have to do. Find that North Star of, this is the direction of travel we want to be in. It just so happens to be that a new telecom system will help you to communicate internally, or a PR push will help you to communicate who you are as a brand to a certain demographic. So just have such a laser-like focus on where we need to be, and that will drive what we do, how we go about it. And I think that's something that salespeople always get so wrong. You pick up the phone, we can do this, we can do that. We've trebled our staff numbers the past year. We've won 14 awards. But then the prospect's just going to ask, well, so what? What does that mean for me? How does that impact my life? Whereas if you pick up the phone and say, I've actually just seen you've won an award you've got the best HR in Birmingham. That's absolutely fantastic. Is that something that's really important to you? Well, guess what? We're also working in the same space. We think this could be helpful. So flip what you think on its head and just have an appreciation for that person. What's important to them? What do they value? Where do they actually want to be? Absolutely. Because that's what it all hinges on. You could have the best product and service in the world. If you can't demonstrate what that means for the customer, there's no point.
That's something I definitely want to cover a lot more on as far as technique and how we do certain things, because it's all about the people. It's all about the psychology and nothing really to do with you or your product or service.
Exactly.
First thing I want to do is, in your experience, your opinion, I'm curious, where would you rate cold calling in the list of priorities for growing a business? And sort of within there, I'm thinking you've got your cold outreach, which doesn't just include obviously cold calling.
Yeah.
You've got your networking. But let's say me and you just started a business together, and we've got to make money this month, otherwise the lights are going out. What would you say would be your number one priority if you had to focus on nothing else because you've got time for it?
Yeah.
How are you going to grow that business? What would you say is the top priority for anyone getting started?
Number one, researching into your prospects. So when I say cold calling, I don't actually think in my head that I want to make a sale. I don't even think about onboarding my prospect at that point in time. I'm thinking about how do I demonstrate my knowledge and my appreciation for where my prospect is. So whereas it would be very tempting to go onto Google, search for, I don't know, let's say law firms, just for argument's sake, I could search for law firms in Birmingham and make an Excel sheet. I'd just copy through Google My Business. I could copy every name of every law firm, the phone number of every law firm, email address for every law firm, and call. That is cold calling, isn't it? You're bashing the phones and you're trying to open the door. But whereas what I would rather do, and I think is important when you say what's important for first steps approaching a company, we really need to do a lot more research into each specific prospect. So rather than calling up law firm number one, hi, it's Bruno, I offer this product and service, I'd love to show it you, don't really care. No, thank you. On to number two, on to number three. Comes to the afternoon, you've rang 50 law firms and no one's been interested. I think it's very important to do that research in the front end rather than doing a little bit of work and then, well, I see it like a triangle. So you do a little bit of work at the start, you do quite a couple of presentations, you might do 3 follow-ups, and then it's 6 months worth of chasing. Do you want to buy? I flip that on its head. I do a lot of research into About Us pages, into the team in the company, into their mission statements, into their news. I'd read their blogs, their news articles, anything on social media that shows about what they're doing. And I'd use that as a reason to call. So I'd say, look, I've seen you've done a charity day last week. Is that something that you're really passionate about? Positioning yourself as a thoughtful, conscientious company. Well, I have this product and service that's going to enable you to do that. So I think turning it on its head and putting all the work in the research phase, you're doing more fact finding, picking out pieces of information that's going to enable you to get the sale. So most of my time is actually done in the research and the fact finding stage. And if we can do that well, the actual close and the sale just comes down to well, do you want to do it then? Shall we go ahead and move forward? So cold calling in my eyes is not, do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Which is very traditionally, most of your time is spent chasing up. Oh, just follow it up. Just seeing if you look through the presentation. Just wanted to check if you'd read our emails. We should be doing all of that work at the starting. I just wanted to make sure that I understand your mission statement really well before putting this presentation to you. So my cold calling is demonstrating what I know about that company. And then at the end, it comes down to, so do you want to buy it? It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. So cold calling, what's important to me is, again, just, I've said it a million times, but demonstrating an appreciation for that prospect's lived experience and where they need to be, rather than do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Hopefully that makes sense.
You give me two questions there, because just responding to what you've obviously said there, I think one of my favourite ones is you can't sell to someone who's not in the market to buy. Number one rule of sales. And like you said, if you've got the right information, you get them chatting. If it's the right fit for them, you've just got to lead them towards it. But two things you've given me to think about there is, with the research side, you've said, like, let's say your target is 50 calls in a day. Will you, the level of research that I've gathered you're doing on each one of them, are you, like, let's say you're doing the research for like a day, and then the next day you're able to hit the 50 calls, or are you cutting your quota in half because you're dedicating more time?
Sorry, I should have been clear. Yeah, we will call a smaller number of prospects, but with
quality of conversation.
Exactly that. So rather than just pepper spraying, shotgun style, try and hit as many people as possible, I will make you feel like I am only talking to Dan. I'm not talking to prospect number 52 on an Excel sheet.
So that's really interesting.
So you're swapping volume for quality.
The number one thing I've heard about sales, which I've been trying to do and build, is volume. It's a numbers game. You're kind of giving me the opposite argument in some sense.
I don't think the best sales managers are super conscious of, have you made 100 calls today? I was delivering some sales training to a hugely successful recruitment company, and the managing director there literally says, I'm not targeting people on how many calls they make, which I suppose is quite daunting if you're a sales manager and you've got something that's very easily measured. Well, I know that my team made 200 calls today across the four of them, therefore I must be a good sales manager. That's very easy to demonstrate. Well, we made the calls, therefore the sales should come. I think it takes a bit of bravery and a bit of, it comes into that we're playing a game with no rules that isn't so easily measured. If we can demonstrate more quality, it's harder to report back to the management team or whoever we're responsible for. But at the end of the day, that's going to help us to hit that number, the sales figure, which is all important. So I think there's an element of, it's easy to kid yourself. I've made 100 calls. I've sent 100 emails. I've left 50 voicemails. That's immediately obvious that you've got activity, but that's just quantitative. There's an element that we ignore when it comes to CRMs and presentations and pie charts. It's, well, were they actually quality? How did you make them feel?
Well, it sounds like the much more logical approach, because if we're just tracking volume, then I suppose that's got to equate to some sort of value. But if you'd like, because this was one of my things with cold calling, which I'm going to come on to, is like, it doesn't have a good rep. A lot of people can't stand getting them, like
I don't go, come on, it's my job.
Yeah, like people really can't stand it when they insult you without permission. So it's just really interesting though that you would, because from a technique, which is why I'm curious as far as where you would rate that in like the priority outreach methods. If you're hitting, like, if you're doing like 100 calls a day and you've not qualified anyone for a presentation, you've not got anyone scheduled for a call, anything else in marketing doing that kind of output without the return wouldn't really be something people focus on.
Yeah.
So I think it's got to be surely a better way to actually just say, like, as long as you are making money, because if you're doing that for months and have made absolutely no money, that's obviously a concern. But it's got to be the better approach, right? To actually, like, don't worry about quantity. If you're hitting numbers, great, but mostly just focus on obviously the value of that conversation.
I think you answered the question yourself as well. You say, I don't like receiving cold calls, but in the same breath, it's very tempting to say, but I know I have to make 100 calls in a day if I'm going to be good at it. But you've just explained that you don't like what you think you have to do. Mm-hmm. And I think, as a salesperson, it's absolutely critical. I could apply external pressure to 100 people. I've got to look at it. I've got to be interested in this product. Whereas all I really have to do is to unpick and really get that internal urgency. If I can get internal urgency out of one or two people in a day, that's infinitely more valuable than having exerted external pressure on 100 prospects. Yeah, definitely. So
I think it makes the job harder for you as well, right? Because it's not something you really look forward to. If you're expecting it to be a no, and you've got to go through so many, go into it just because I had results from it. Like, let's say somewhat cold, or at least I know something, or it's been recommended, but they get the call and they've never heard of me and they don't know I'm going to call. Just that little bit of a touch point has always yielded at least a better conversation. But it's when because I'm doing a little bit of cold calling, it's what I want to try and get better at. But it's that you go into that expectation of they're going to hate this is going to be horrible. Already, I feel like I've shot myself in the foot by even bothering to go into that conversation.
So so say you go into a cold call and your job is to put pressure onto someone to deliver everything you know about yourself, how good we are, how fantastic we are, etc. That's not going to be as powerful as going in with a mindset of, I really want to understand what makes this company tick. I want to make sure I know so specifically where that company is, where they want to be, whether they put a number to that or a time scale to that. And I think if you can really, this is what I'm trying to get at, if you can go in with that mindset of, I want to unpick something and find something out that is going to really create that internal urgency, God, we really do need to get this sorted out. And since Dan's asked me, I've realised I'm 3 months away from the target that we're going to be reporting back to the board. If you can unpick that internal urgency, you're going to be so much more successful than going in trying to create that pressure onto someone. So if you, next time you pick up the phone, think, as long as I come off this call with more of an appreciation for where that company wants to be, then I can actually give a more reasonable proposal to them.
So I'm not doing enough to be able to say I've really done cold calling, but from the limited experience I've had of trying to do that as like specifically I have a assigned hire to sit and cold call, and of course just the calls I'm doing anyway. What I've tried to focus on more is just ask questions, because like what we were sort of speaking about before we started filming, if you're working with people who are fairly wealthy, what are the kind of things they respond best to? They probably don't have time, but they typically, I think anyone really, if someone's taken interest in you, it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, someone's asking questions about you, you want to talk about yourself. So my goal, especially like if I'm cold calling or if I'm in like a room with someone, just ask questions, aim to speak by myself as little as possible, because if you've asked the right questions, led them to where you want them, they're going to ask you the questions that we've got to do is then just convert. So that's definitely been my more preferred approach, but it's just interesting because I don't know if you're watching any of these YouTubers who are like teaching people how to do this, a lot of their stuff seems counter opposite.
I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them.
Because this is why it came on my radar, because there's people that specifically teach how to do an agency, for example, which they talk about all sorts of outreach, but one of the number one things they say is cold call, and the script that they're teaching and the methods that they're teaching is very much like what we both agree is not it's like, hi, I do this, blah 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 blah, and you just spend 30 seconds without permission to just waffle at this person, and they can't wait for you to share. So it's just really interesting, obviously, to hear from someone who does this professionally that that's not the way to do it. It's very reassuring, actually.
Yeah, so I could have, and touching on that, so I went to a solar panel installer. I could have two clients with the same prospects. One does mail drops and one does video media. So I could call up the green consultancy who fits PV panels, and I could say, right, hi, it's Bruno. We make videos in order to get your brand out there, in order to make sure people are aware of who you are. But I could also go in with the leaflet dropper people and say exactly the same. Hi, it's Bruno. We drop leaflets in order to get more people aware of who you are. And that's kind of all the same, and that's not really particularly inspiring. But if I rang up and I said, hi, it's Bruno here, my job is to make sure that you install as many photovoltaic panels as possible this month. We just so happen to do it then we can just literally insert whatever product or service. The product and service doesn't really matter at that point. All my prospect cares about is installing more solar panels.
One of my thoughts then was, like, the example you just gave, you're calling someone up, you want awareness for your business. What if I called up and I was just, let's say, for example, hi, you're asking the questions related to, are you looking to sell some more products? Are you open to having conversation about how someone could help this for you? Would that be the way you'd go in? Or because you said something, you basically just had the what you said, it sounded like good product fit with the right market because your research has paid off. But what if you just went in and just immediately started asking prospecting questions to establish whether or not they are actually interested?
I think that would be a little cold. You know, someone calls you up and says, "Hi, what's important to you? Where are you right now? Where are you trying to grow?" I'd be thinking, "Well, who's this? Is this one of my competition? Perhaps, you know, sniffing about, trying to see about where we are." So everything's got to be led. You know, going back to that research, I would always pick up the phone. The first thing I would say is, "Hi, it's Bruno here. I'm just on your Facebook page, or I'm just on your Instagram page. I've seen a really cool piece of news about you investing in some new machinery. Am I kind of safe to assume that you're looking to grow in this space? Is that right?" So we're leading with, "I've read about you." It's not about my products and services, because my products and services don't mean anything unless it's aligned to that end goal, that North Star of, as a business, this is what we need to achieve. So I suppose it's a case of putting in that research and proving that I'm only speaking to you. It will only have been you who invested, say you're an engineering company, it would only have been your company who's invested £1 million in a new CNC machine. Therefore, I'm only speaking to you, which is going to make you more open to telling me what I need to know, because I've demonstrated that I actually care about you. I've seen a news story that's exclusive to you, which means I'm probably going to be interested in getting you to where you need to be. And that's what it's all about, that personalised, well-researched, thought-out approach.
Sure. Before we cover any more specifically like the sort of cold conversations, have you had any experience with other forms of outreach, your DMs, your cold emails, and where would you rank those as far as priorities? If I need sales quick, is it, or is it a combination of things?
It's a tough one. I've had experience in marketing with HTML emails where you send them out to 10,000 people and then you get a report of who's opened them, where are they, who's clicked, where have they clicked about. That's useful. I would only use that as a guide, though. I'd only produce a list of who's opened the email and what they've clicked on in order to call them. I think it's so important to get them on the phone. Marketing's great. It can disqualify people who aren't interested or have clicked unsubscribe or deleted the email straight away. Now I know that I don't need to waste my time on them, but I think it's that activity of producing email, producing content, getting it out to them, that's almost to establish, are they interested? Are they having a sniff of our information? Are they curious about something that we've put their way? And I would only use that to guide where I'm going to spend my time and my resources, picking up the phone to call them. The value of that, I think it is reducing now since, third-party cookies has been removed. The value of data that you own, that you've collected, is going to skyrocket now. I know that moving in 24, as Google are deprecating the third-party cookies, it's a massive part in sales and marketing. So that leads me, it kind of reinforces what I've said, in that data from elsewhere is going to be less valuable. We need to now go out and actually collect that data ourselves as a first party. That's crucial. So that's where I would see emails, email marketing, other marketing tools that we have. That's to really qualify and disqualify out, to work out where we want to put the laborious time of actually picking up the phone on a one-to-one basis. We need to the best quality data to see where we want to allocate our resources, and that's where I see that the marketing tools are a sort of qualification device using data that we've collected, which is going to be a huge talking point over the next few years.
It's a very interesting take on that. I like it because I think like email, like with the DMs, and the same thing we're talking about with cold calling, it doesn't have the best reputation because people, I don't think it really matters who you are. Everyone gets bombarded with some form of direct communication trying to sell them something, whether it's a pizza, it's insurance, or whatever it is. So emails almost like they sit there, they gather dust when they land into someone's inbox. But why I'm so interested in cold calling in particular is because for me, which I'm sure you might have experienced as well, there is no better way of trying to sell to someone than face to face. If you're in front of someone's face, there's an unrivaled way of just communicating, which obviously, whether they like it or they don't, I suppose it's going to be based on the technique.
Yeah.
But if you can just get them on the phone, it's the same thing without the face to face, but you've got them talking. And if you can keep them talking and you can find there's a good place, a good position for them, great. If not, you can shake hands on having had a good chat.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting take on the whole cold email, because it's something else these gurus try to preach, that like you need to be sending thousands of emails a week, etc.
But that's really easy to measure, and I think you can fall. It's kind of, sometimes it can be a bit of a fool's errand. Let's not do what's best for my business. Let's do what's easiest to produce a report on. Let's do something that we can give big headline figures. Like, how would you measure a good day that way? You could say, well, we've reached more people than ever before. We've had more opens and more clicks on our emails than ever before. Surely more sales should come, right? Whereas if you're a cold caller with a boss and you say, well, actually, the quality of the calls was a lot better. How would you put that into a number? How would you report that back to someone? It's harder to measure and manage that way. Ultimately,
well, you've got better data from it, though. Like, you may be the person, you may be the bottleneck of that data because you've had the conversation. Like you say, it went well, but if I'm the manager of that team, how do I know? I've just got to trust you. But that's the thing as well, isn't it? Like, if you send an email, you can see that they've opened it, but what was their tone of voice? How did they feel about opening it? Is there any sort of opportunity you can hook something into that? Or is it just they opened it, they're never going to remember you again? So it's one of the things I'm definitely interested in.
Yeah, I'm kind of cynical in around that, how people will just do what they can measure and manage and report back. That's their motivation, is to produce a nice report at the end of the month while we've hit more people. Whereas for me, it's to get that quality, the grey area, the convincing people. And
it almost sounds like, when you put it like that, it sounds like it's almost another form of professional procrastination, where I'm hitting these numbers, I've got this data, I've done my part, but the company still needs the revenue.
Exactly. I've done my job. I hit my numbers. Someone else's problem.
So we've spoken a little bit about cold calling doesn't have the best reputation, but none of this kind of direct approach has the best reputation, really. I think obviously the dream for anyone or any business is just have an abundance of people knocking on your door. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, cold calling is better suited for more of the relationship-based businesses, where you have to have that conversation. In some respects, you have to like the person you're going to be working with, as compared to e-commerce, where you can work from the shadows. It doesn't really matter. You build the brand independent of yourself. So when let's say we're just focusing on it from a person providing a service to someone else, why would you recommend would you recommend cold calling? Or why would you recommend cold calling with it having such a bad reputation? Is it something that people, if they've not done it before and they're a little bit scared, should they consider doing it? Or is it just something that they should maybe, if they're not good at it, just don't bother?
I wouldn't get too caught up in thinking that cold calling has to be done on a telephone. I mean, a call is a call on a phone, yes. But I would say there's an element of, you do it yourself. You go out networking. We go and meet new people who we don't know. We give 30-second, 60-second pitches. We hear theirs about what's important to them. And I suppose a cold call is just reaching out to someone who you've never met before. That could be on the phone, but it could also be in a networking environment. So don't discount how good you will already be. You're good at networking. You know how to listen to someone. You know how to deliver a 60-second pitch. And that's exactly the same as a cold call on the phone, isn't it? You've not met them. You have now met them. You understand what they're about, and they understand what you're about, and it gives you the opportunity to recommend some products or services. So don't get stuck on the fact that a cold calling has to be done on a phone. It can be done in a room, networking at the same time. So just try and...
One of the other things that's is good is just walking into someone's space. If they have a shop for it or something, same sort of thing, having the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing.
That's a cold call. I could walk into a delicatessen if I wanted to sell social media management or something to them. I could walk into them. That is a cold call. It's not done on the phone, but it will help me to find out about them, help me to give them some information about us, and move on to that sales proposal stage. That's all we're trying to do here. That's all a cold call is. Can I learn something about them? Can I impress something onto them? And can I win the right to propose something? That's literally all we're trying to do in that first instance.
Make them aware of your value, see if they're into it, try and close
and demonstrate an appreciation for them. That's crucial.
One of my earlier conversations for this was someone else who does sales, and he trains it to like more larger sort of corporate teams. And one of the biggest things he said to me was like, nothing happens until something happens, which is simply like, no one knows about you until they know about you.
Exactly.
How are you getting out there? And again, with service-based business, it's a little bit harder because, especially from like the marketing perspective, the kind of content you've got to be putting out, is that the kind of stuff that like your target market's even going to like? And are you just creating content for people who aspire to do the same?
Yeah.
It's a conversation we're having internally all the time. It's like, what are we creating for here, and who's going to like it? Because if your target audience isn't on the platforms, and social media maybe isn't even the best strategy as well. When it comes to cold calling, I think we've covered a little bit about this. Your perspective on it is really refreshing, actually, just because you seem to have such a casual approach to it, where it's like you're not worried because there's nothing to worry about. Let's say someone's going into this brand new. They may be a little bit anxious, as you know, all of us are in some way. What do they need to exclude the research? Because I think we've been really clear on that. That was really good insight. But if I'm going into this, I've done all my research, I've done everything Bruno's told me to do, but I'm still worried about that perceived rejection or something. How do I go into that differently, where I'm almost excited about it a little bit? Is there a way?
Yeah. I don't know the term, but there's, when you try something new and you're good at it, and then you get better and better and you learn more and more, and then you find that your results sort of drop off, and then you get really, really good. And that bell curve, isn't it, where that happens. I'd say trust the fact that you're nervous and you're scared and you don't really know what you're doing. I think that will actually come across as more authentic than someone who thinks they know everything, assumes they know the answer to what you're going to say, and they're almost kind of prejudging what you're about to say, and that comes across as too slick, too slimy, and that's not authentic. I think if you trust the fact that because you're new, you're going to ask the stupid questions, you're going to ask things that are obvious. Well, guess what? They weren't obvious to your prospect. It's obvious to you because you do it every single day. A dentist doesn't get nervous before doing your teeth. A pilot doesn't, you'd hope not, but a pilot doesn't get nervous before flying. Let's think about this the same here. You know all the answers and you're an expert in your craft, but the other person isn't. So I suppose just rely on the fact that because you don't think you're all it, those nerves are going to actually ground you, make you more curious and make you more genuine. And I think that's where a lot of salespeople come across as salesy, because they go, well, I found out everything I need to know. Now it's just a case of going through the motions. And I think a lot of cold callers don't have that personal approach. They don't have that real curiosity into who they're speaking. They're just doing a job. They're just trying to hit the numbers on the whiteboard. They're not trying to really squeeze out all the juice from the fruit.
There's so from some of the sales traders I've been watching, like on YouTube or the books I've listened to, one of my favorite ones, which I've not really tried, I'd love to get your take on. For a say it, Steve Bartlett,
I do.
Our CEO. I've not really been able to get this one out of my head, just because he had a little piece in one of his conversations where he complimented this as a strategy. It got through to him. You start the conversation by immediately saying, "Hi, Bruno, just so you know, this is a cold call. Would you rather throw your phone out the window, or can I just get 30 seconds of your time?"
Yeah.
What would you say? Is that something you'd ever try?
It's good disarming honesty. I think there's nothing.
What I liked about it. I've had it used on me. I quite like people selling to me when when I want them to sell to me. If I'm, I don't know, in a shop or something, and someone I'm going to buy, I like seeing people trying to sell. That's what I liked about that technique. But I heard mixed feedback on it as far as people who haven't tried it. But I
suppose it could come across as, "Oh, have you just heard that?" I suppose once you become aware of that technique, it kind of loses its power, doesn't it? I suppose because it's, oh, you've just learnt this off the internet, and now you're trying it because you think it's a shortcut to get me to listen. So that would backfire if I was aware of it.
Would it backfire entirely though, or would it, because like you said initially, it's disarming, and I think that's what I like about it. Someone's calling you up, if you don't know who they are, you know what they're trying to do. You just can't you don't want them to waffle about. You just want them to get to the fucking point. So, I don't think it makes much difference whether you explicitly say that, which is kind of like it's kind of fair, and it's.
They know what they're getting. You've been up front, and to be honest with you, I would. In fact, I'm just thinking now, if I was really busy and one of my staff was off and I'm running around and a machine's broken down and someone calls out, you say, actually, you know what? Now's not a good time. Can you call me later? Yeah. Whereas contrast that with someone you've been told to keep them on the phone for as long as possible if you can. You're gonna burn that bridge, aren't you, initially?
Because regardless of whether or not you've made it clear this is a cold call, the prospect knows it's a cold call.
I know.
So getting to the point, either in that initial starting point of saying this is a cold call, or just getting to the point of like sharing a little bit of value.
Maybe there's an element as well. If you never told me it was a cold call to start, but now I found out it is, what else am I going to find out along my customer journey? What else are you hiding from me? Whereas if you've been completely upfront and candid from the start saying, this is a cold call, guess what? I'm going to be putting a pound sign with a number after it, and I'm going to expect you to pay for that. Something interesting I actually learned, here's a cool little technique for you. I learned previous clients, they had a lady who was a fantastic saleswoman. She was on 20 grand a month, ridiculous. And what she used to do at the start of every call, she'd say, I'm responsible for making sure you've got the right product. It was a dating service. So I want to make sure you're on the right level of service. I'm actually responsible for making sure your profile's written, and I'm responsible for collecting the fee. So at the start there, she would prime them. They knew that she was going to be asking for some money further down the line. So I suppose in that, it's a similar way of approaching it is, hi, I'm a salesperson. I'd love to provide my products and services to you. So guess what? There will be a cost at the end of it. And it's not okay, that sounds really good. That's really good. But now I'm going to charge you for it. So I suppose that kind of disarming honesty shows that there's something, it will be coming and it is a sale and it won't be a shock to the system. And, oh, you kept that quiet. What else you can quiet?
Now that we're thinking about it, I suppose as well, because if you're calling someone and they were never going to buy anyway, well, they were never going to buy, and you're not going to force them to buy. That's part of the prospecting. You've got to qualify people. So in the same thought then, if you're doing that and you're saying, this is a cold call, I've done my research and I think I've got some value for you, but at the end of the call, there is going to be a charge to it. If that person was going to buy, they're probably still going to buy, but you very quickly then just disqualified anyone who is not interested.
Or if they said, actually, it's not me who deals with it, it has to go to tender. Yeah. You could say, okay, well, could you point me in the direction of the tender website and I can go through that way? Yeah, so I suppose that's a good way of minimising resources.
Typically people who they either know they have a problem and they want a solution to it, or they're not aware of the problem and you've got to make them aware and then find the solution. So in doing that, you just kind of, I could see that being a quick way of speeding up that process of asking. Because if you ask, again, it comes back to, right, if you ask the right questions about, is this something you're aware of? Do you need a solution to this? Is it a pain or is it a want that they've got? And then if you've got the right solution for it and they're aware of it, they're probably already looking. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I quite like that. I might try it. I'm a bit conscious of time. I've got questions about networking, 60 seconds. I mean, just the speed we're going through this conversation, I think we could just blitz through it all. But do you want to focus a little bit more on your sales training?
I'm happy to talk about absolutely anything far away, honestly. Okay. This doesn't have to be too much of a plug for me. I'm happy just to talk.
Okay, but I think within there, like, you've already shared a lot of really interesting insights. And I'm really curious to see like how you said you're working for companies independently, which is really exciting, but now you're also providing this as something to other people. Because I saw this, I saw you provided some training to Mark Pearson, and he was really happy.
Yeah, it's really cool, really cool.
Next day, he'd I think he booked a meeting.
1 for 1 he went, first cold call, he booked someone. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was the first conversation I recorded for this as well. So tell me, just summarize a little bit about it now. Why are you offering sales training? In what capacity are you offering sales training? How can someone benefit from that? Because I think the number one thing I've already got from this conversation is if you're very much providing a service that's relationship based, it's not transactional like a product. This is something to strongly consider or adapt to, because if you're not networking, you probably should. And if you're not doing any kind of outbound marketing, definitely should.
Yeah.
So how can people tap into this, and why would it benefit them?
I know that the reason I made it came from people asking me, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? What do you think about this? So I thought, well, if there's clearly demand for it, let's supply that. There's so many small, say, one-man bands, entrepreneurs, smaller owner-managed businesses. There's so many of those that I've come across networking, cold calling, that are really good at what they do. They're super good at what they do, but they just don't know how to sort of introduce that to their right target market. They spent years honing in their perfect target market. They know what to do. They know who to speak to. They know how to fulfill that service, but they're just not confident enough in connecting all the dots and putting it all together and actually doing it. So all I really wanted to do was just take the stress and the guesswork away from something that is only a very, very small part of the customer journey. So people know what to do once they've onboarded a client. They know how to put a proposal together, or they know how to manage the account. But all that's missing is just that first little bit of how do we start that conversation. So in the book, we've got 3 chapters all about what's in it for me. So rather than talking about yourself, how do we actually understand what impact our products and services will have on the customer's business or on the customer's life. We've got a bit about prospecting, how to make it personal, like we talked about the research. I mean, when I worked with Mark, it actually turned out that the person who was responsible for making the decision actually writes the school's newsletter. So Mark could call up and say, would you believe it? I've just read the newsletter that you've written. I can see that apprenticeships or whatever it is so important to you. Here's how we can help you to achieve that goal. And we also just sort of put together a rough call script, putting it all together. So, I just know that people are so good at what they do, but they just don't know how to make that appetizing to their target market. They're okay once they're in the room, and all I just want to do is to help them to get the foot in the door. It takes about an hour to do. All the answers are in there. It's just a case of unpicking it from them.
From what I've got from you, whether it's part of your training or just how you found yourself in it, you're coming at it from a much more personable perspective, which I like because it also directly aligns with what we know about the psychology and how this works. So just coming back into what you were saying, I'll be completely honest. I'm personally, I think, stuck in that point of I haven't fully refined my niche, which is one of the things. But then there's also, how do I get this in front of people? When I'm in a room with someone and I can have a chat with someone and they have the need, there's usually a good chance we'll end up working together. But when I'm not in that position to just directly have the conversation, that's where I struggle. So I've tried the DMs, I've tried the emails, not unexpectedly, it hasn't really seen the kind of return, which I went into that knowing. But this is why with cold calling, I think I've got tied up in my own thoughts of, well, the DMs aren't working, the cold emails aren't working. If I'm just calling people, I'm just going to have to directly hear their frustration.
Yeah.
With this. So, but I'm an overthinker anyway.
But what I'm saying is, don't think that a DM on LinkedIn isn't a cold call. It is a cold call. It's a message that you've sent to someone that was unsolicited, whether it's done through the mode of voice or whether it's done through text, whether it's done through video. It's all roads lead to, how do I get that person to open up to tell me what's important to them? Mm-hmm. So when you do DM someone, do you talk about yourself, or do you say, I'm actually on your website, it looks pretty cool, I've seen something that's just happened, can we have a chat about it, and leave it at that? Or do you say, I want to bring in 2 cameras, 3 tripods, 3 lights and 2 mics, and it's all HD? They don't really care about that. All they care about is, well, that's the means to the end. You need to find out the end first.
What are they interested in? How's it going to benefit them?
Yeah.
How is it going to take? How much is it going to cost?
we can just so help you to get that by doing a podcast or whatever it may be.
So what's the most common mistakes people are making when they go into this? Because I've gathered one of the obvious mistakes is you go in and you just waffle a pitch. There's nothing that you personally connect with yourself to the person. Why are you reaching out to them?
Yeah.
Should they care that you're reaching out to them?
That's it.
But that's it. Is there anything more to it as far as like really common mistakes people make where if they knew the right techniques, they'd be getting much better returns?
I think most people fail the so what test. Next time you're talking to someone, next time you're writing an email, try this. Read a sentence and then ask yourself, so what? If you can't answer that, you're stuffed. You've had it. So what I always will do is I'll think, I don't know, give us an example. What products or service? Give us a product or service, anything.
Home insurance.
Home insurance. So we could say we provide the cheapest home insurance. We've got 5 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot or whatever. So what? A full flat. We're the cheapest. What does that mean? That means that you probably have a bit more money to go on holiday. That you can go on a better holiday this year. So I might say, well, we actually want to free up a bit of spare change in your books in order you to buy a brand new camera in order to go on a better holiday. We just so happen to do that by really trying to get that price as low as possible to be as competitive as possible. Or rather than we've got 5 stars on Trustpilot, well, so what? I could say, well, we actually can prove that we've delivered a fantastic service. We know how important it is for you to be so happy once we've delivered our service. We can just kind of qualify that in. Look at our Trustpilot.
That's really clever because every example you've given, you find a way to twist it in a way where it just feels very much about them.
It's the only way to do it. It's that what's in it for me. People are going to say, yes, but so what? Yes, but what does that do for me?
So directly within any kind of USP of a business or any kind of upsell, you want to try and directly let the client know, we've done this for you.
Yeah, like I see it on the North Face jackets, it has 800 tag. I couldn't care if it's 800 tag, 8 million tag. I just want to be warm when I go on a walk. Yeah. If I said, here's a coat, it'll keep you warm, you go, oh, that's a really good coat. If I said, here's a coat, it's 800 tag, you'd go, well, what does that mean for me? How is that going to impact my life? I just want to be warm. So the warmth is qualified by the fact that the coat's 800 tag, but I don't care whether it's 800 tag or 700 tag, as long as it keeps me warm.
Reminds me of I very rarely have to, well, more so now since they put it on streaming, but I don't have to watch adverts so much. When they come on, I'm really heavily critical because I work in marketing. It's interesting to see how others are. And yesterday, one came on for baby formula.
Okay.
And I just started kicking off when they finished. I was just having a moan to the missus, like, why the fuck are they talking about, like...
Maybe it knows something you don't.
No, but they were talking, like, big words, like, we've mastered the formula of, like, this and that. Yeah. And I'm like, those words mean nothing. Those are made-up words. Who fucking cares? Okay,
so, yeah, let's pick that apart then. So we've got a brand new formula and it's got a brand new nutrient that we've never had before.
I've never heard before.
Yeah.
I'm fairly interested in like science.
You get it with the hair stuff, don't you, all the time? We've got this brand new acid.
It's like they made up a big word and the leverage was like, they're thinking people are going to buy this because they don't understand that word. It must be good.
Yeah, so people won't buy Yakult because it's got bifidus digestivum in it. But what they really want is to have a nice calm belly that doesn't rumble or isn't upset. Yeah. So I could go in and say, here's our brand new product, it's got bifidus digestivum, but so what? What's in it for me? Whereas I say, here, I brought a brand new product that's going to make sure that your tummy doesn't rumble, it's going to be a little bit less upset throughout the day, which is going to reduce the stress that you feel. It just so happens to be that we've added bifidus digestivum into it in order to get you... Your goal is to walk around without having your belly hurting. This is going to help you to achieve that. Yeah, so you've kind of flipped on its head.
That was my thought on like the baby formula. It was like, they just want to know, like, are their kids going to be okay, that you've done your research. So basically all that came from, like, they were saying, we've heavily researched what's in breast milk and, we've mastered these things, and then you throw it in the big words. But, like, I think the research is good, but really, like, how's this going to benefit my baby?
We're going to have happy, healthy babies all across the UK. Done.
Yeah. I just found it really funny. I just couldn't believe that, like, that's your tactic because I can't imagine that ever being a better sell than just pointing out the fact that you want a really good baby formula for your baby, you want a happy, healthy, and you want to trust that that's going to be
Yeah.
fine. Surely that's a better pitch, hands down, every time.
Or give your child the best foundational years that they can ever hope for.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, nutrients.
You can achieve that by giving them the new formula. You can achieve it by reading them books. You can achieve it by singing to them before they go to bed. The actual process doesn't really matter. Again, it's the end goal.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking
But
about
how are these big companies making this mistake? How is today in 2024 with all this information and knowledge
when I
and
picked up. As you could tell, I just couldn't believe it. It was like I can't remember the brand, but it's like an established brand. It's they were playing an ad on Disney Plus, but it was just like, who signed off on that?
yeah.
Because more than anything, I guess I was interested. Like, surely that can't possibly work, but someone's greenlit that to go live.
Your best ones for what we're talking about is Apple, I think, in the world for a reason. You don't. If you got an iPhone, do you know how many megapixels the camera is? Do you know how many gigahertz the processor is? No, but they say about your apps run smooth. You can play games without any lag.
If we're talking about
That's all they talk about, how easy it is to use, how smooth the user experience is. They don't know about the megabytes and the gigabytes and the megahertz. It's not of a concern to the end consumer. Whereas you can look at Samsung, they'll tell you, we've got a 64 million megapixel camera and a refresh rate of 52 hertz or whatever it may be. That's Samsung compared to Apple, and who's selling more product.
Are you Apple or Samsung?
I'm an Apple fanboy. I know it's wrong, but I still do it. How weird is that?
I'm a Samsung, always have been. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to go into my critiques of Apple, but if we're talking about, I think what's really, really interesting about Apple's marketing, obviously, how they built it in the early days, it was at a time when obviously that kind of tech was in its infancy, so that had a huge advantage to them. But it doesn't, you kind of touched on it, with Apple, whatever their new product is, it doesn't fucking matter. If someone's going to buy Apple, they're going to buy Apple because they love Apple. With Samsung, if I'm buying a Samsung, I am interested in the specs. I'm going to buy the Samsung probably anyway. But I'm interested how this phone is different. With Apple, this is why they can get away with basically just cookie cutter.
Easy for you to say.
The same five. Maybe it's slightly bigger. Maybe there's an extra lens that does nothing.
For me, it just works, though. When I've had Androids have crashed or it just takes a few more. I know that it's probably a more capable device, but I just want it to work. And that's what's in it for me. It works. That's all I need. That is all I need. And I'll pay probably triple what the actual phone's worth just because I know it will work. That's what's in it for me. That's true. Simplicity.
That's always been the biggest argument is performance quality, which I've just personally never had issues. And
But I'm not into performance. I don't care how fast my phone is. I'm not wowed by Samsung's claims that it's got a GPU of however many, whatever you measure. I'm not interested in that. I just want a phone that my WhatsApp, my emails, and my news works. That's all I want. I'm not impressed by what they think I'm impressed. So there might be two different sort of profiles of buyer. That Samsung needs to impress people like you who are impressed by the tech, and you know that you need whatever benchmarks may be. But then why that message isn't going to be powerful for someone like me who I just want it to reload on a go like that.
Yeah, I guess moral to that one, understand your target audience, and I'll just say why you like Apple, the convenience, the trust you have in it. I don't like Apple because I found it, like in the early days when I first played with it, I think it was an iPod I had, I found it incredibly inconvenient, the fact that if you're they're not compatible with other devices. If it's Apple, it has to be Apple. So just to get my design thing in the early days was a bloody nightmare.
Yeah.
When I choose, I just want to pirate a single stick in my device. So I get, I don't know, that for me.
You didn't just admit to pirating media on video, did you? Click that out.
This was back in the day where people were like,
LimeWire.
But yeah, like that for me, I guess that summarizes me quite well. I was inconvenienced enough I was always Samsung after that.
But it goes back to what's important to your prospect. You wouldn't know, like, if you had a Samsung and an iPod, and Samsung and an Apple in my pocket, my approach would be so different, wouldn't it? Depending on who I speak to. I'd recommend an iPhone, or I'd recommend a Samsung at the end, but that's just the means. What's the end? Is it convenience, or is it blazing specs. Depending on what you tell me is important to you, then it's going to be, well, do you want this one? Or do you want that one? It's not hard work to sell then, is it? Because I actually know what you want. Okay, well, do you want this one? Yes or no, take it or leave it.
Yeah, definitely. One of the conversations I had, or part of the conversation I had with Bevan recently, was we were talking about changes in how the market has changed. Now, from a psychological level, nothing's changed. It's people are maybe just responding better to some things, maybe better than they did previously. Is there anything that you can comment on that you would say is significant changes that you've experienced or forecast coming? And how can this knowledge benefit us going into this when we're thinking about growing a business or starting one from scratch?
I'm only young, so I wouldn't know.
It's a tough question.
I suppose it. Customers and prospects have got more information than they've ever had. They're more informed. Chances are, before someone's picked up the phone or responded to your email or responded to your voicemail, if they were to come back to you, they've probably had a look at your website. They've probably had a look at your blogs about your news articles. And I suppose they're a lot more informed than ever before, which is bad if you're not doing a thorough job and you're not doing it properly, because you're not going to be able to convince them that you're credible, that you're trustworthy, that you're honest, that you're going to deliver a good product. But then equally, that's a beauty for someone who's willing to put in the time. You know, imagine that upside down triangle. If you're willing to put in all that time and effort to position yourself, to introduce ideas and concepts, if you've done that hard work at the front end, it can make closing a customer so much easier, because you just clarify everything, they know everything. Do you want to buy it? Yeah. Whereas before, it would have to be a bit more of a protracted process, wouldn't it, of different meetings, different calls, and it would take a far more touch points.
So would you agree that, for what I've gathered from what you were just saying, I agree with, if I'm right, authenticity is more important than ever before, which is why personal brand is really important. And it's funny, like when you catch like someone working in the same sort of industry as you, and you check out their website and just look, you wonder, how are these people making sales when there's no authenticity in it? Their website's shady maybe, but they're doing really well. That's where I find it really interesting to wonder, how are they doing so well? Because definitely, and like I think the main thing for this conversation is we're focusing on like actual relationship-based businesses. If you don't have solid authenticity and you actually like are a nice person to work with and talk to, I think you're always really going to struggle.
I mean, my experience is all B2B, business to business rather than business to consumer. I think a lot of B2C companies, if you're a quid cheaper, you're probably going to win the business.
It's not just that, actually, though. So case studies with e-commerce, what really does well in the initial stages and then massively compounds over time is when the person behind the e-commerce is responding to every message, or in some cases sending a handwritten message.
Yeah, you see them.
Thank you for supporting me. Again, that all ties into authenticity, going the extra mile for the people who are actually buying from you and seeing them more as a collaborator or supporter of you and your business rather than just some customer to take you next. No, let's keep this person around. Let's reinforce the fact that we are grateful. So I guess it all ties into the same, really. How can you be as authentic as possible and transparent? Don't hide things, and just be as genuine as you can. Be interested in the prospects.
I suppose it's all about having a real consistent message, and every single activity that you do must tie back into that end goal. So say I go on Etsy, I'm probably into handmade things. I'm probably into really feeling a connection with the producer of the whatever it may be, a snow globe, whatever. If I'm interested in buying direct from the people that make the snow globe, and I see a nice little handwritten message, it all kind of ties in there. If I was to receive something that was printed and it felt like it had gone out to everyone, that doesn't really tie into the kind of bespoke and boutique vibe that shop's trying to give. So I suppose how to be authentic, I've found, is make sure that every single action I do, every single touch point with the customer that we've got that end goal, that what's the actual reason that they value me in mind. So if I know that if I'm doing a real personal service, I'm probably not going to send an email because they've come to me because they want to deal with me and they want to hear me and have those spontaneous, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So I suppose it's a case of before doing anything, ask yourself, well, does this actually achieve the goals that we set out before they came on board? Probably not the best answer.
I'm going to ask you a question again, which I think I've been circling around it a little bit, so forgive me if I'm just squeezing too much out of it. But I'll give you a quick example. I had a conversation with someone recently. I'm not going to name names or like say sort of what industry they were working in, but they were in the kind of situation of gone into self-employment for personal reasons, like child's come into the picture and they just needed a bit more flexibility.
Oh, yeah.
They've been building a service which already is popular in the market, already plenty of people do it, which is a good sign. But they've, for the last 6 months, really struggled to get their first client. Closing thoughts on advice. Someone's in that situation. It's been long enough where pressure's on. They're getting a little bit nervous and anxious because
They've all been there.
looking forward to get a job. What could we do for someone in that short space of time, because they've got to both learn, adapt, and practice what they're doing? What could we do? What would be the best advice we could give for them?
I'd say stop focusing on what you do. Stop describing what your day looks like. Stop describing exactly what your product or service is, and just focus on the change you're trying to make to your target market. If you're trying to make more sales for people, focus on that. Say, the reason I'm in business is I want to make sales for people. I've actually found that the best way to do that is yada, yada, yada. Or if I wanted to go into charities, I want to increase the number of donations that someone's going to say, I want to increase the number of donations that this charity is receiving. How I've done that is I've created this new little bit of tech or this new app that enables people to donate. So it's very easy when you've started out to just describe the journey you've been on. We made an app. We bought some cameras. We bought some property. We moved into this shop. People don't care what you're doing. That's just the means. They don't care about your means. As long as it checks out and it's credible, yes, they care about the end. So focus on why you went into business. Why did you ditch your last job? Why did you remove that safety barrier of employment? It's because you care about changing the world in some way. So just focus on that and make that your goal rather than merely describing the features of what you do or how you go about it. Your customer doesn't care about getting dragged down into the weeds about whether you do this, that, or the other, or if it takes you 2 weeks or 2 minutes. They don't care. All they care about is, will it help me to get to where I need to be on budget and in time?
Yeah, great advice. So, closing thoughts. What are you currently working on? Anything you want to sort of shout about? Anything that people can tap in?
I mean, we go through all of this in my Cold Calling Made Easy book. It's a little workshop, comes with its own book. I come to you, deliver it anywhere in Birmingham. We go through prospecting, how to make it really personal. We go through doing your research into it. We come out with a basic call plan that takes that stress and the guesswork away. You're not going to be doing as many calls. You're not going to be reaching 100 people a day, but we will be really getting that, squeezing that quality out, that personal outreach, and focusing on how you can change someone's business for the better rather than merely describing what we do or how hard it is or what the mechanics are. People don't care about that. People have got access to so much information that chances are they'll pretty much know what you're doing or how it works. All people care about is what's in it for them. And just, if you're going to take anything away from this podcast, anytime you say something, ask yourself, so what? And see if you've got an answer to it. If you have, that's what you should lead with.
I'm going to give you a fist bump to close.
Boom. Thank you. Thank you.